Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Storytelling for Advocacy. It's going to be presented by Sierra Rogers and Darian Isom from the Mockingbird Society. My name is Ozzy Arroyo with the College Success Foundation. And I know we have people joining from across the state, so thank you for taking the time to be here today. During today's webinar, Darian and Sarah will be covering the legislative process and how young people can share their own stories while still protecting themselves, advocating for their communities, and helping leave a lasting impact. A couple quick items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, so if you want to rewatch it later on, or for those that weren't able to make it today, it'll be posted on our website. We'll also be sending a follow-up email with all the information that's shared today. And there will be room for questions at the end of today's presentation, but feel free to drop questions in the chat during the presentation as well, and those will get answered. And yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started. So I will hand it on over to Sierra and Darian. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. And I know more people are joining, but for those who are here, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to hear from us and a little bit about the Mockingbird Society. Today, we're going to be going over a few key points, a few one-on-ones of legislative advocacy, storytelling, and also how all of that can apply to the Washington Passport Network. So we're going to be monitoring the chat, so if you have questions, we'll be able to answer those. But also at the end of this training, we will have questions, comments at the end. So we can go ahead and get started. So first, at the Mockingbird Society, we always like to start with the land and equity acknowledgement. I'm going to go ahead and read this out loud. And if you have questions on what a land and equity acknowledgement is, we have some links and content and also can answer any questions in the chat that you have. So first, I invite everyone to pause, quiet, and reflect as we open with this acknowledgement. We would like to recognize that we are on the land of the Coast Salish, Interior Salish, and Yakama Nation tribes. They have taken care of this land before it was colonized, and they continue to care for, honor, and defend their land. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of the native tribes of Washington State. We would also like to recognize the historical and systemic exploitation and oppression of Indigenous peoples, enslaved Africans, and other historically underinvested people, which has led to the disproportionality and representation of these communities among the youth we serve and whose voices we seek to elevate. I ask that we keep this in mind as we work to transform the systems that have and continue to impact us, as well as every other system of care and all people here in Washington State. Okay, we can go on to the next. The Mockingbird Society, we also love to start off our trainings in all group spaces with group agreements. This is an open space, and this is open for any sort of questions, comments, or concerns through this training as well. We shouldn't be getting into anything too spicy today, but it's always a good standard to start off with. So we always want to make sure we respect one another, be inclusive, assume best intentions, and address impacts. 1 mic, 1 star. Confidentiality, if it applies. Focus on the topic and agenda in meetings. Be safe, sober. Assist and support any accessibility needs. So some people may have cameras off. That is okay. We encourage you to have those on, but if you can't today, that is okay as well. Respect pronouns and preferences, practice intentional language, and ask questions to understand topics that you don't understand. We are happy to answer those and be of assistance. And again, as a reminder, please raise any questions or agreement suggestions in the chat now. And if you don't have any, we can continue. Okay, so we're going to get started with introductions. Darian and I will go first, but we have a bit of a prompt. We have name, pronouns, what land you join us from, and our check-in question, which is, what does advocacy mean to you? And if you don't know what that means, what do you want to learn about advocacy as well? Maybe a good pivot. And we also put, if you don't know what land you're joining us from, we have a link in the chat, and also a link about why pronouns matter as well. So I'll go first since I'm the yapper. My name is Sierra Rogers. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Youth Programs with the Mockingbird Society. I am joining from Yakama Nation lands, and advocacy means power, voice, and change. And it means being able to impact the things that impact me and others that are needing that advocacy. So it's definitely a superpower. It definitely is how a lot of the things that are in our everyday lives are shaped, shifted, funded, supported. So it really means a lot. So that's a little bit about me. And again, we'll go over more about the Mockingbird Society here in a bit. So that way you're not like, what the heck's going on? Who is this? But yeah, I'll pass it to you, Darian.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Darian Isom. I use she, her pronouns. I am joining from Upper Skagit Lands today in Skagit County, and I am the Youth Programs Outreach and Engagement Manager at the Mockingbird Society. So I get to help connect with community partners and our chapter members and to really just be connected with everyone as much as I can. And what advocacy means to me, I'm the one that wrote this down, and I don't know if I took time to like fully think about it, but um, advocacy really for me means like standing up for what I believe in, what others are important to others. I think there's also a big part of like that connection and like wanting to have more community and being like, this is what my community is going through, not just myself, and really trying to be present within everyone and with everyone. That's my very short little spiel. But we also would love if you're willing to like put your intros in the chat so that we can get to know you as well. Because that kind of is part of advocacy. And then, especially with legislation and like that kind of advocacy, is like being able to have that communication open. Um, yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Darian. And yeah, if anybody would like to unmute too, we have time. Love to hear from you, see your faces, hear your voices, get to know you. Go ahead and raise your hand in the chat if you'd like to. If not, go ahead and put it in the chat and we can read out loud. Give everybody a few seconds. And then Darian, while we're waiting for some responses, could you also put the link in for people being able to search up what land they're on? Thank you. Now, don't be shy, y'all. We're in a training for an hour. So if you can introduce yourselves and whatever you're comfortable with sharing too is great. Especially like what Darian mentioned, when we get into legislative advocacy and talking to legislators, doing testimony either on Zoom or in person, having these face-to-face conversations and practicing speaking out loud is super important.
Well, my name is Whitney. My pronouns are she, her. I can't access the land acknowledgement. I really actually want to look into that. So could it be dropped in the chat again? I'm driving. And then what does advocacy mean to me? Advocacy means utilizing my voice to either just talk from my lived expertise of my experiences or helping empower those voices that either aren't able to or help uplift them to speak for themselves. So just a quick synopsis.
Thank you, Whitney. If while you're driving, I can look it up for you if you'd like. What county do you live in? Well, if you're able to respond later, we can go ahead and look that up for you if you're curious, if the link's not working for you. Okay, we have a few people in the chat. Hi, everyone. I am Alexandra, Bellevue College student. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Joining you today from Redmond, Washington. Advocacy Day for me means to represent the voice of the student and support the ideas of access and affordability of education. Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Alexandra. Emerson, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm okay, cool. I'm Emerson. I'm from UW Milwaukee, and we live on Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands. I guess advocacy means to me kind of just like going back to what she was saying, like just kind of speaking up for people who might not have the courage to speak up for themselves, and also like speak up for people who, and like kind of educate people on just like things that they might not know. Like I know that, I mean, for me, like I was in foster care, so um, you know, not many people know what that experience is like and how hard it can be sometimes. So, educating people on that is, usually a good thing.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Advocacy is important. It impacts all of us. Next in the chat, I see Michelle Helmerick with a group. We are a group from Eastern Washington University listening together today. Hey, everybody, whoever's back there. As pro staff, we advocate for students every day, but we hope to empower students to advocate for themselves. That is powerful. Thank you, Michelle. And I'm also from Eastern Washington. I'm in Moses Lake, so a little bit of Eastern Washington representation, not too far from you guys. We also have Cadence Dent. Cadence, pronoun she, they, joining from Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homeland in and around Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Wow, joining from Wisconsin. Thanks for joining. Checking question, what does advocacy mean to you? Advocacy to me is being able to stand up for people who may not be able to stand up for themselves. Thank you for sharing. I see somebody, Emelita. Would you like to unmute, or sorry if you already did? I wasn't tracking, but I think you're next.
That's okay. I was like, I'll go with the flow.
Hmm.
But yeah, my name's Amalita and I use she, they pronouns. Um, I live on the homelands of Lemhi and Nooksack, I believe. Um, I've seen Darian a few times at the office where I work, so that's kind of cool to be here. Um, but advocacy to me, um, pretty much along with everyone else, I tend to like kind of put it more on like other people and like I just love like working with young adults and helping them like advocate for themselves and being able to advocate for them as well. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, and glad that you know Darian. That's awesome. Darian gets out there. A great outreach and engagement manager. We have Carol. Hi, I'm Carol from the University of Washington, Seattle. We use she, her pronouns. Advocacy means providing a voice for those that are unable to. We also have Sierra West. Hey, Sierra with a C. Good to see you in the group. We, small group, are joining from the University of Washington Seattle campus. We are on the Coast Salish people's land, and advocacy means sharing your truth to make change for those who come after you. Absolutely. Retweet that. I don't see anything else. Oh, spoke too soon. Sorry if I butcher your name, but it looks like Luana.
Yeah,
She was perfect, Luana. I'm with Sierra with UW Seattle. We are on the homeland of Coast Salish. Advocacy for me means standing up for others and pushing for human rights, justice, and equality. It's about empowering people and creating change. Retweet all of that too. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else feeling brave or want to share before we move on to the portion of our training? Okay, that is okay. Thank you for joining us anyway, and thank you for the introductions. We can go ahead and get started on the storytelling for advocacy portion of the training. But first, let me tell you about who we are and what our mission and vision is. So the Mockingbird's vision envisions that each and every young person, regardless of race and individual experience, reaches adulthood with the equitable opportunity to thrive. Our mission is to transform the foster care system and end youth homelessness. Mockingbird creates, supports, and advocates for racially equitable, healthy environments that develop young people at risk of or experiencing foster care or homelessness. Now you're probably wondering, what does that have to do with me? Well, Mockingbird wants to make sure that we're outreaching and connecting with all resources for young people. We work with people ages 13 to 26, and Washington Passport Network is very crucial to young people who are seeking that education and the supports. And we love to train and support young people to have independence, advocacy that impacts their well-being and their independence and the betterment of their lives in the future. So that's why we're able to give you some details. A lot of our advocacy work is through legislation, connecting with community partners. And this is a little bit about our specific work that we do.
Yeah, if I could add just a little bit with that advocacy and like legislation, like I think it's everywhere across the country right now. Like legislative sessions have started in each state. And I know within Mockingbird, like we have some of our amazing chapter members that are lived experts in foster care or having experience with homelessness. And they're actively currently like going down to like Olympia to our Capitol and like advocating already and like testifying. So we have some background a little bit with this stuff.
Yeah, we do. We were just at a hearing yesterday. I was in Olympia, Washington, all day yesterday, testifying with the House. And session is starting very busy, and our young people are out there, and we develop them, train them, and support them with their stories. And they have gotten the spiel that y'all are getting today. So happy to share. Thank you for sharing too, Darian. So let's go a little bit over the 101s. What is advocacy? So advocacy is the act or process of supporting a cause or a proposal, to act as an advocate for someone or something. Advocacy can be done in everyday life and does not exclusively exist in a political or legislative setting. And advocacy can happen at the doctor's office, at school, work, or even buying groceries. This could also be seen as standing up for yourself or others. So again, advocacy has a lot of definitions and can be applied in many places. And we'll be going over mostly about the legislative pieces, but it does highlight a lot of different parts and aspects of our everyday lives. Go ahead and hit the next slide. So we're going to go over a few pieces, and we'll go over a little bit about sharing testimony. We're going to be going over a little bit about what testimony is in legislation and storytelling. And we're going to be going over a few of these things in definitions. And the first one that we're going to be going over is something called tragedy tourism. So tragedy tourism is when somebody feels obligated to overshare or go into detail of one's personal experiences with abuse or tragedy, personal, really vulnerable pieces of their lives due to a prompt or situation. Experiencing tragedy or tourism is not only harmful to speaker's emotional state, but also to the listener who may be triggered due to their own personal traumas. We can go ahead and go to the next slide because it'll go over some of the different pieces of the differences between storytelling and tragedy tourism. And I'll go over a little bit of why that's really important to know for us to go into this, especially if you have not advocated before, and why these definitions are important. So when we're doing storytelling, when we're advocating, when we're going in front of legislators and we're doing personal things about what these things mean to me, and in regards to Washington Passport Network, when we're discussing, the impacts of funding and our livelihoods and college and education, sometimes we're inclined or maybe even feel prompted to share really personal details that may bring out the negative charge feelings, when advocacy should really make us all feel inspired and good and supported when sharing stories. So let's go over a little bit about the differences and how to identify those when you are advocating. So tragedy tourism is more so questions asked out of curiosity, especially if legislators are like, can you tell me, and we get this sometimes, like, how did you become homeless? That right there is not a great situation. Or like, how come you can't afford college? Right? These are things that may be tragedy tourism and not really get to the point, or may open wounds or leave us to feel really prompted to overshare. Self-care not established beforehand, and preparedness, undiversified listeners. Listeners are mostly people or power of privilege in the room. Bystanding listeners, inflicts trauma listener and speaker. Invasive questions, presenting out of obligation, and speaker is put on the spot to present. So again, this is a lot of like not preparedness, not feeling ready, just oversharing a story in front of a legislator. Whereas storytelling is more the questions that are asked of us are necessary. The self-care is encouraged, and we have preparedness for legislation and testimony. There's a diverse group of listeners. The speaker, who would be you all, feels like an equal in the front of the listeners. Listeners actually participate. It's informative, clarifying. You're presenting by choice, not by forcedness. And speakers given time to prepare. And that is extremely important for when you testify and share personal stories. And some of the shared in betweens, beauty of a Venn diagram in the middle. Speaker can be any age group, good intentions and desire to make the change can trigger secondary trauma if you are sharing really detailed pieces, and speaker or listener may need to cry. And we see that a lot. That happened yesterday. And for those who may be like, why are y'all crying in legislative testimony? A lot of legislation is personal, and a lot of why people are testifying in person is because it impacts their direct personal lives, work lives, the state of the world. And so sometimes when you are sharing, whether it's sad or not, it could induce some like frustration. It could also induce some desperation and needing to feel like they're listening to you. And that's why we go over these pieces, just so that people can always, if you want to advocate and testify, these are great things to consider. I did see somebody unmute. Do you have a question? Okay, Carol, if you have a question, let me know. Raise your hand. I'm happy to answer. Okay, if there's no any questions or comments, we can go to the next slide. So now you kind of know some of the like the hard stuff and kind of like those emotional aspects. Here's a few tools that you can use, and we call it the 4 C's of sharing stories and testimony. So the first one is C for choose. You have the power to choose what you want to share. Why are you sharing this information? Who benefits from you sharing this information? So that's choose, choosing the intention. Number 2 is connect. Who is the audience? How will you connect with them? How can you help them understand the purpose of the story? 3 is claim. Take ownership of your story and the emotions they bring. You interpret your experience and name its significance. And 4 is credibility. The listener assigns credibility. You can maximize your credibility by being consistent and having an organized presentation and having well-supported arguments. So if you've never testified before, if you've never shared a story before in that kind of situation, this is a really great tool for when you strategize and build out your testimony or your scripts, if you choose to do that. You can use the 4 C's to kind of go off a checklist of all the things to keep in mind for when you prepare to testify in front of legislators and the public.
Yeah, and if I just want to add to with the credibility, because I think sometimes that point of like the listener assigns credibility can kind of feel like, oh, well then like why am I doing it? Or like if they're determining that my story's important or whatever. And that's not necessarily like the point of it. Like no matter what stories advocating, it's important, it's personal. It's more so comes in the fact of like they take it as what like how they'll take it. Um, like what they deem important doesn't necessarily mean that what you're saying isn't important because it's kind of like personal preference almost, which is dumb because everyone's story is important and everyone's story needs to happen if they're willing to share. So just because someone else is kind of assigning that a credibility doesn't invalidate the story or invalidate the experience anymore.
Absolutely. Thank you, Darian. Okay, I think we're ready to go on to the next slide. So now you got a few tools. Now you got a few understandings of like our emotional state and like developing our stories and understand like what we want to say. Some storytelling, brainstorming, and other key things to think about before you go and testify. So 1 being, ask yourself, what does it mean to be an effective storyteller? 2 is, why is it important to tell your story? And 3, what are risks in storytelling? And making sure that we have those understandings so that we were fully prepared. We can navigate any sort of like questions. Because again, if you have never been to a hearing, or if you've never testified or advocated before, sometimes there can be legislators who might ask questions on the fly, or sometimes there might be a change in I guess like speaker orientation. Sometimes things can be shifted and canceled. Policy's crazy, y'all. And it's great to know those facts first and know what your why is, so that way the impact for others to know your why is even better. But I think we can go to the next one. So sorry to be corny, but it is a good video. It's good content. Showing my age a little bit, but I think everybody needs to see this. And if you have, throwback, and if you haven't, this is one of those classic How a Bill Becomes Law videos that was shared in school, and I think it comes from the 70s. But it's a catchy tune, and sorry, not sorry that this will be stuck in your head later today. But we're gonna go over this a little bit and listen and watch.
Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm gonna live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
Again, I did apologize in advance for the corniness, but it is still helpful knowledge. So before I go into the legislative advocacy piece, again, if you are, it is iconic. It kind of is. It never goes away. It'll never die. But one of the things that I want to highlight is we are in session right now. Session in Washington State started January 13th. And currently, people are scheduling hearings with representatives and senators. People are getting champions of supportive bills. And I know Washington Passport Network currently is asking for funding and support for this program. And so a lot of this is being developed and wanting to have people schedule meetings with representatives and senators to be able to have these conversations and have these asks. And then this is where you'd be testifying and sharing stories, signing in pro for bills, signing in letters of support for initiatives. And then this is all happens through session, and session ends in April. this year. So there's a lot of work to be done if bills and support items move forward. So Darian, go ahead. I see you.
Yeah, I just want to add, because I know in that video it shows like going from the House to the Senate, like one bill like does that. And one thing that does happen sometimes is there will be like a bill that starts out in like the Senate, but they might have like a companion bill that is in like the House at the same time, so that they're already talking about the bill and like gearing up for when that bill from like the Senate gets to come over to the House. So like Mockingbird, we're seeing that right now where we have two kind of in both, hoping that they make it onto the governor's desk.
That is right. In the video, it said president, but in Washington State's case, it would be our governor. Okay, diving into legislative advocacy. Advocating for legislative issues tends to be done by testifying in favor or against a proposed bill, issue, or budget ask. This advocacy tends to happen in legislative hearings, and Darian highlighted a little bit of that, what's going on currently, which are spaces where the Senate, House, and other official bodies welcome public opinions on proposed legislation. So showing up in large numbers and providing facts, research, and personal stories can largely influence whether or not a bill is passed. There are 3 different ways to testify or advocate in these hearings. So like I was yesterday, you can go in person to Olympia. You can also join remotely over Zoom. So any one of you, like you're joining this meeting, could attend a hearing in person and have 1 to 2 minutes to speak on some of the things that you're advocating for. Or you can submit a written testimony that can be read by another person or will be submitted for the legislators to read after the hearing. So there are many opportunities for you all to get involved in advocacy and write letters of support for what you all are asking for. Before we move on, are there any thoughts or questions? Okay, I think we can go on to the next slide. So we have a little bit of information now applies to you. This was sent from our friends over at Washington Passport Network about a little bit of the work that Passport to College has been doing. So I'm going to read over that. It's a lot of wordy text, but it's important information for you all to know if you don't already. So in 2008, Passport to College was created to support state foster youth enroll and complete college. With such a narrow definition of eligibility, the program served 200 to 300 students per year. In 2018, Passport legislature expanded to serve a broader youth population, youth impacted by state, tribal, or federal foster care, and youth impacted by unaccompanied homelessness. Since the expansion, the number of young people served increased by over 300%, and now the program is serving about 1,600 eligible youth from the beginning of this 2025 winter quarter. This number can still continue to increase since an eligible young person can be identified at any point of the school year. In the 2024 legislative session, WASAC's agency request for this session sought to increase program funding to keep up with the growing number of young people eligible for the program, but only received $1 million out of the $2 million that was requested. The funding model at this time was as follows. Scholarship award was a maximum of $5,000 per year for up to 6 years for enrolled college students. This award supported students with the indirect or hidden costs of attending college, like housing, food, transportation, book supplies, etc. WASAC issued additional support funds for the college institutions, $500 per quarter per enrolled Passport student, or $750 per semester per enrolled Passport student. The funding was flexible and institutions can use it for things like basic needs assistance with housing, food, transportation, clothing, childcare, etc. Academic support like specialized tutoring services, medical assistance like hospital bills, counseling sessions, etc. Programming events, and staffing. Seems like there's a lot of overall support needs that were being asked for and met. We can go ahead and head over to the next slide and go over what the 2024-25 academic year is looking like. So due to the budget shortfall and increasing number of eligible Passport students, the scholarship award was reduced to $2,800 for this academic year. And college institutions received the same amount of funding from the previous 2023-2024 year, despite serving more students in the program this year. So here's a look at what 2025 legislative session is putting forth. A bill is put forward by Senator Nobles to make Passport to Careers a caseload forecasted program, aka entitlement program like Washington College Grant, which would restore funding to the program, allowing the scholarship award to go back to the $5,000 and providing college institutions with the support funding necessary to support all Passport students on their campus. We want to encourage young people to testify for their support of Passport Bill to demonstrate the critical need of this program and to create volume about the program's impacts to legislators. So before we move on to the next slide, just to reiterate, advocacy is important, and advocacy happens in all aspects of life. It impacts a lot of young people, and it impacts a lot of general population. And I think it's important to address what we can do as advocates and what we can do in session to help support the things that are really crucial to us and the things that mean a lot to us. So currently, Senator Nobles, who is a great senator, Tina Nobles is pretty cool and she's fierce. They are going to be wanting to have people advocate and connect and speak about this legislative ask. And during this year, for those who don't know, we have entered a new presidential election, and which has caused a lot of, you've probably heard about it, budget deficit, changes in legislation, a lot of things that are impacting programs like this. And the current governor's budget in Washington State is in a high deficit. And so representatives and senators, all kinds of legislators, lobbyists are coming together, and they're prioritizing only picking up certain bills that are most impacting young people and only have a certain amount of dollars that they're willing to onboard and sponsor for issues like this in Washington State. Now today, if you feel inspired, I think it's good to research and talk with Washington Passport Network about how you all can advocate and testify and get part of this legislation, especially if Washington Passport Network and the college support has been a support to you. So I'll leave a small pause for any questions, since that was a lot of jargon and me talking as well. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. Oh, thought we had more. So again, I guess I'll just reiterate and also open it to the Washington Passport Network folks if you have anything that you'd like to share. And I know that people are also maybe not super comfortable and unable to speak. But I think it's really important to even ask questions or even share your curiosities or concerns about legislation. So yeah, if there's anything else people want to share, please feel free to go on ahead. Michelle and that Eastern Washington group, I believe. Yes, we can share those slides. We are happy to do so. Laura and Osvaldo, if that's okay, we can send those to you to share out with the team. Awesome.
Yes, and there will be a follow-up email going to everyone that registered, and I'll include the slides in that as well.
Perfect. Darian, I was wondering, did we have a slide including our map, or did we toss that? There it is. Okay. Now, a little bit about Mockingbird Society too. Again, we work with those who experience homelessness, foster care, and other barriers of systemic exploitative agencies like juvenile justice, and things like that. If you're interested in getting involved with the Mockingbird Society, we teach you how to advocate. We teach you to develop topics and bills that are important to you. And we also have a wide network of connections. And I know there's some people that are not from Washington State joining us today, but that does not mean that we don't want to connect with you. And we also, in our other program, the Mockingbird Family Program, are an international program. And we do advocacy and want to connect with every single person that needs those resources. But if you're in Washington State, this is how Mockingbird is broken up. We have the northern region, which, hey, Darian, that's Darian over there, is the Whatcom, Skagit, Snohomish, and San Juan Island counties. We have Eastern, which is that big old chunk, rural communities, hitting Okanagan, Ferry, Stevens, Ponderay, Spokane, Lincoln, Adams, Whitman, Garfield, Columbia, and Asotin. And we have the email for our engagement coordinator there. We also have Central Washington, which is Chelan, Douglas, Grant, Kittitas, Yakima, Klickitat, Skamania, Benton, Franklin, and Walla Walla counties. Peninsula and Tacoma are currently hosted by the same EC, but let me look at that purple really quick. That is Clallam, Jefferson, Grace Harbor, Mason, Thurston, Pacific, Lewis, Cowlitz, Clark, and Pierce counties. So we hit every county. We want to help people advocate and give them tips and tools on how to be a part of the legislative process. And we also have stipended opportunities internally. We have great support networks and resources. And we would love to just connect with you and keep you in our network, and also offer any sort of advocacy support that y'all are looking for. So again, Osvaldo and Laura, anyone from the Passport Network team, if there was anything you wanted to share, this would probably be a good time.
I see Laura just dropped in the chat an informational flyer about Senate Bill 5275, aka the passport bill. So it's attached there. Hopefully, you guys can click on it and download it. If not, I will include that in the follow-up email as well. And also just wanted to say, if anyone has any questions about the work we do at College Success Foundation or with the Washington Passport Network, or ways to get involved in advocating or even testifying, you can reach out to us at passport@collegesuccessfoundation.org. I'll drop it in the chat as well.
Yes, and a little bit more on advocacy and support for testifying. And, if you would like coaching on that, feel free to also email the passport@collegesuccessfoundation.org email, and let us know if you would also like additional coaching support in crafting your story. We can definitely connect you with our director of government relations, and she will be able to provide a session on advocacy coaching for you.
I'd also offer that Mockingbird is also, again, we are in Olympia often. If you would like to be a part of our sessions, we're happy to invite you. You can tune in. Also, all of the hearing sessions are live and they are recorded. So if you go to and I can find this link, you can see every hearing and you can listen and watch and see how they go, because I think the mental preparation helps a lot as well, to be like, oh, okay, it's not that scary. In the How a Bill Becomes Law video, they acted like they were like screaming in there, but that doesn't usually happen, especially for these topics like this. They can, but not all the time. And they're a lot friendlier than you think. And thank you, Darian, for questions. You can reach out to us at yp@mockingbirdssociety.org, or reach out to Darian at mockingbirdssociety.org. But please feel inspired to advocate and testify and get involved. And Sierra and team, I see you. What's your question?
Hi, my question is, I know that there was a first hearing on passport. I wonder what it looks like what we should be looking for, and what following opportunities there'll be for testifying.
Osvaldo and Laura, you might have some more insight for scheduling and things that are coming up.
Yeah, Laura, do you have any info regarding the schedule?
I do not have the status of the bill and where it's at currently right now. But I can definitely provide information to Ozzy when he sends out the follow-up email to the registered attendees, and get back on this question.
Also, sometimes scheduling hearings are very last minute, as a heads up. So even with us, we kind of are at the mercy of legislators and their schedules. So they try to fill us in whenever they can, but that might be like, hey, we found out this is my only time, show up 3 days. And that is the beast of policy and session. But that might also be one of the things too, is that you might not have a scheduled hearing due to the inflexibility of schedules.
Yeah, I'll add too, if there isn't a scheduled hearing, you also still have the opportunity to meet with your legislatures, like from your districts. Like you can always reach out to them and try to schedule like an in-person meeting with them or a Zoom and maybe just put it in their ear too of what's happening with the bills. So that if it doesn't have an immediate like session where you can testify, you can still maybe meet with them. They're generally pretty open for the most part. They're still pretty inflexible sometimes, but they tend to want to meet, especially with their constituents, to see what is happening.
I just put in the chat, the TVW is where you can find all the recorded sessions. I'm going to also link like a Mockingbird hearing. You can probably, if you've had a hearing already, you can find it on the website to also see probably Senator Noble speaking on support for this. You can navigate, but every hearing has it. And Sierra, that's a great question. There's a lot of ways. You can always email your representative directly and their legal team as well and their assistant aide. You can always have, a lobbyist reach out, your organization reach out, but I think the most direct way is to email their legislative emails directly. Of course. Pretty easy to find. If you know who you want to talk to, you can always look up you can email all the representatives. You can email just the ones in your district. You can email Senator Nobles even and be like, hey, Senator Nobles, as you're advocating for us, this is what I want to share. And I just would love this highlighted for you to keep this in mind as you're speaking to other representatives and senators and legislators. You got it. You beat me to it, Darian. Any other thoughts or questions?
And don't worry about losing any of these links. I'll include them all in the follow-up email.
I'm glad that you thought it was awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. That's really good to hear. Thank you for the immediate feedback, Amelita, that I appreciate it. And this is just like a little like less than an hour training. Imagine if you connected with us even after this. You're going to learn a lot. There's a lot of cool things to do. Thank you all for joining. Before I wrap it up, are there any last thoughts, comments, questions, anything from Watch the Passport Network that y'all want to share?
Yes, I'm actually going to follow up on Sierra's question with the C in the chat. So the question is, will the Passport Network share out when there is an opportunity to testify, or how can students best follow what is happening with this? We will be using our newsletter campaign to share out any legislative opportunities to get involved in things like testifying. And so we can definitely add those who are registered for this webinar training. We can add your guys' email to that newsletter campaign so you guys can also receive up-to-date information about Senate Bill 5275. And for particularly students, you will most likely be getting email alerts from passport at collegesuccessfoundation.org contact regarding bill status updates about Senate Bill 5275 and other opportunities and ways that you can advocate and use your voice for change. So please be on the lookout for those emails. Sometimes it can get bounced into your spam or junk folder. So we've had that happen multiple times. So please just search in all of your inboxes for any email communications from our organization. And there's also a question asking if there's a template or email guides for emailing legislators. And I actually want to ask our Mockingbird friends if they actually have a resource on this.
Heck yeah, we do. I'm looking at it right now. We can add this to the content that's shared out, and it will have like Mockingbird applicable things, but let me share my screen really quick before we hop off. So that way you can kind of get a look at what our testimony prep guide looks like. So I do this right. Can you all see my screen? Cool. So super cute, Mockingbird little guide. Gives you a little bit of insight of what it looks like, and that's our friends and us actually testifying in Olympia for our Youth Advocacy Day. We give a little bit of insight on what it means to testify as like a reminder, what it means to be in person, remote, or written, things to consider, and then all this great things, what to remember, blah, blah, blah. And then what a draft outline will look like in person. And then we have an example testimony. So this actually is like a draft that you can use for yourself, but thank you, blah, 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 or committees members. My name is blah, blah, blah. And then I'm an advocate with the Washington Passport Network. And then involve some of the different things here and kind of give an understanding of like what you're looking for and what your asks are. And I know Washington Passport Network folks have some of those asks and have their flyer and can help identify the specifics. And then here's a little bit about the personal story and what that means, and then how you ask for support and get straight to the point and have it be really solidified and have all the things that you'll need for asking for their support in your bill. So we will send this out and some of this content so that way you have it as a resource in the future. Any other thoughts or questions? Thank you, Sierra with the C, and thanks for the team also joining your, your Zoom as well. If that's everything, thank you, folks, for letting us give this training out. Super happy to help out. And reach out to us if you have any questions, and good luck. We'll be signing in pro for you all and hoping advocate and be writing letters and support for you as well. So thank you for your time and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sierra and Darian, for joining us today, and thanks for everyone for hopping on this training.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye, Sierra with an S.
Bye, Sierra with a C.